So, ended up losing my job. And, for a lot of people, that sounds like the most stressful moment in their life because, the bills don't stop, responsibility don't stop, and life doesn't stop either. Everything just keeps going. But for that moment, honestly, you know, um, didn't know what to come next, but I knew I had to take action. And the next thing that happened in my life changed forever. So, welcome to the Larry Motivates channel. Today we're going to be sharing the most difficult season in my life that I have experienced thus far, and how I took my season and made it an opportunity for growth. And so, if you ever lost a job, if you ever, experienced a setback in life, or life just kind of knocked you down, this is the video for you. So, the shock. Basically, what ended up happening was they told me they were not going to extend my contract after being told that I was. And the reason why, it came from the higher ups, so this is C level, with Verizon, is that they were cutting the budget. And so they cut the budget to Chicago, and since the budget got cut, I was no longer going to be renewing my contract. So, that sucked. And emotionally, I felt slightly betrayed because we had this new manager that I was developing this relationship with, and we talked about what the day and day looks like, and there's definitely some things that I was turning, and my numbers were very good actually. And so when that happened, when I made that call to kind of figure out like what was going on, he didn't pick the phone up for me. I didn't receive a text from him, not one. And he told me he would go to bat for me, and I felt like we was developing this relationship. Then I didn't hear back from him. And so one thing that I learned was about actual like relationships when it comes to corporate America. But outside of that, there was an uncertainty, okay, on what those next steps were, because I had not had a plan on, okay, having extra income that could suffice if this thing would not have worked out. And so I feel like that's kind of where I made my mistake at when it came to corporate America and working and bringing in more revenue streams. So I'm like, okay, learn that. And so fear did not set in because I had already been through this before, but there was uncertainty. But I was certain I was going to take some action, and I was certain that I was not going to, go into depression again. So that was, again, now we're going from a shock. Now we're going to the decision. And the decision was to refuse to be defeated, refuse to let this affect me in a negative way, and choose action over excuses, because a lot of people were losing their jobs. In fact, as you've seen, there's been over a million blacks that have lost their job, and we still gotta find a way, and life still isn't fair. And so I'm like, what, I just gotta figure out how to make this thing work. I gotta figure something out. And so, not just like with my job, but like now I had opportunity to do things that I have been putting off for a little while now. So now, we're on a fitness journey now. I seen that I was overweight, and I gotta get it together. And I know, like, I wanted my spirit and my physical to match. So my spirit was strong, but my physical wasn't. And so I gotta make sure those two things align together. So we got to my fitness journey, start knocking this stuff down. My mind, I was able to think and sleep clearly, walk better, all types of stuff, because I got into this fitness journey. Then start working on this business called Total Tech Now. It's my reseller business where laptops, desktops, watches, tablets, phones, anything that you can think of that's technology, I can resell it. So that was kind of like my next step in building that. And then also this consistency on building this business, right? On creating this content and making sure that is getting out to the people that actually need it, that actually might be in the same position that I'm in, but don't necessarily have the voice that I have. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get back into creating content and being consistent with it as well. So that was kind of like the next change. So one is make sure my spirit's right. Two, getting my health in order. Three was the business, and four was consistency with this content that you guys are now seeing. And so, what was the lesson I learned? The lessons that I learned from the decisions that I had made to the decisions that were made for me was, when it comes to corporate America, to be honest with you, you really don't have no friends until stuff, till crap hits the fan and you see who's actually in your corner. And so, unfortunately, corporate's gonna look out for themselves. There are no friends in corporate. Whether you and your manager are close, that he or she got their own bills to pay. So you can't look for them to still have your back. You got to have your own back. And that was kind of like the biggest thing. I have to have my own back. Now, it's not to say that you gotta have a negative outlook on what this is, but it's just something that I learned on who says that they're gonna be there for you and who isn't. And the people that are gonna be there for you when stuff hits the fan and they actually have your back, that's how you know who's really a friend. Outside that, we just people that work this job and we trying to get to this goal. Point blank period. That's that's really, if I could really say that. And then what I've kind of learned in sales is that there has to be some value that you have to connect from your product or service to the customer, and you have to be a consultant. You just can't sell, because sometimes when you're just selling something and they're in negotiations, you can convince some people to get it, but they might regret it, and then they might return it, and you're gonna get a charge back. So that's one thing that I don't want. I want to be consultant. I want to build a relationship and not just get a one-time sale, because if you can just sell somebody one time, you're not gonna be a repeat customer. They're not gonna mention you to their friends and family. So being a consultant, that gives you more longevity, and also builds your skills on top of that as well when you become a consultant. But you got to go through those things to kind of figure out what you're good at, and then you also got to keep building on those skills, understanding how to talk to people, how to know the industry language, right, and the terminology, and then know what works and does not work when you are in these different industries. So all these things kind of go together. Learning about organization, learning about the language, learning how to speak with people, learning how to be a consultant. All those things that I've learned, kind of fit together, and this has kind of helped me, when it's coming to now kind of trying to get back into the job market, and also doing things on my own that I have learned, right? So we're going from shock to the decisions that I made, to learning the lessons, and now the good news, the comeback, right? New opportunities, learning more about myself, getting these certifications, learning more about AI and how that works for me, and becoming a reseller, and learning more about business, and learning with the government, and having certain conversations with people, and having those C-level conversations again, but not putting in work for corporate, but now putting in work for myself, and what actually happens, and how to actually make a dollar for myself instead of somebody else. Then also, that kind of goes with growing in the business, and then also with my health, learning how to be disciplined, learning how to be organized, being on time with certain things, holding myself accountable, and then be this consistency with this content, learning how to utilize my tools to be effective, right, on a day-to-day basis, on how this could affect somebody if I don't turn this in on time, right, or I'm not consistent with putting these messages out, learning how I can affect people and build on top of that. And so all this stuff help turn and put me into a mindset to get better with everything that I'm doing, right? This was an opportunity for me to grow with my spirit, with the Lord, with my business, with my weight, and with this content. Everything starts to turn anew. And I learned to really, really depend on discipline and not motivation, because discipline is there when motivation is not there. That's probably one of the biggest lessons that I learned. So if you're going through a difficult season right now, and look, it's going to be okay, but don't stop. Your story is not over. You may be one decision away from completely turning around your future. So, subscribe to the Larry Motivates channel. Comment on this video. Like it. Share it with your friends. Please give it to somebody that might be going through something similar, that might need to hear the message that I'm talking about. And I see you in the next video. I'm going to be here. How about you?